Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. Imagine a comedy movie starring Simon Pegg, Monty Python, Eddie Izzard, the late Robin Williams and Joanna Lumley. Now imagine the same movie being directed by Monty Python's Terry Jones, who hasn't made a movie for years. Now let the following sink in. This movie is real and it's been released in British cinemas. It's called Absolutely Anything and I had the chance to go and see it the other day. But is it any good? Well, kind of, sort of, not really, maybe. The movie follows a man called Neil, played by Simon Pegg, who ends up getting powers from some aliens, and these powers give him the ability to wish for anything at all. Anything at all. For example, he can just go, oh, turn that man into a horse, waves his hand, and the man turns into a horse. At the same time, Neil is trying to woo a pretty lady downstairs, played by Kate Beckinsale. Okay, so that's the setup. Sounds quite a lot like Bruce Almighty, right? Well, it kind of is, sort of, just a bit different. A little bit different. I mean, you know how in Bruce Almighty, Bruce can't control people's free will? Simon Pegg can in this movie. He can control anything at all. There's no limitations. Which does give the film a lot more creative freedom compared to Bruce Almighty. Now, the film is also very British sense of humour and culture, so in a way it's a lot different to Bruce Almighty in that sense. Plus, it's a lot ruder and darker, so it goes into other directions. So yeah, it does have the same setup as Bruce Almighty, just a different kind of execution in a way. So most of this movie is just Simon Pegg coming up with all these crazy wishes, and that's what makes the film very fun to watch for the most part, because it's basically Simon Pegg making crazy, insane, nonsensical things happen. One moment a character is suddenly a sausage, the next moment the police have giant ears and pink uniforms. It's that level of wackiness and goofiness, and yeah, that's very fun. And what adds to the craziness is that the villain is actually the love interest's ex, who is a colonel, he's an army colonel, and he's completely crazy, and he's nutty and violent, and he carries a gun, and he's stalking the love interest, and he's off his head. So yeah, most of this film is just crazy, weird, and wacky, and that's what makes it very entertaining for the most part. The problem is that because the film has so much creative freedom, you don't feel as if that there's any grounding or structure, so it's just the film going crazy and just like, so the story just ends up being all over the place, and you're like, wait, okay, so now that's happening, now this is happening, whoa! Makes the film very hyperactive and just all over the place, really. And the weird thing is that the finale is kind of in the middle of the film, or bit like a semi-climax, and then for the last 10 minutes of the film it suddenly becomes serious and starts looking at the responsibilities of Simon Pegg's powers and the consequences of his powers and how he deals with them and all that kind of stuff, and it gets a bit dark and serious, and you're like, wait, what? It's a big tonal whiplash, like, whoa, okay, right, and then it basically wraps up everything under that 10 minutes, that 10-15 minutes. And yeah, so it does make the film as a whole feel really sporadic and all over the place. So yeah, this movie story is a random, cluttered mess, but it does end up providing a lot of wacky, surreal, Python-esque jokes. Now, I did mention a romantic subplot. Is that any good? Not really. It's probably the weakest aspect of the film because it's so cliched and lame. It's just a series of forced tension between the couple created by misunderstandings. I'm sick of these kinds of romantic stories. Can't you think of other ways of making romance interesting in a film? I'm tired of this. So what about this impressive cast, this collection of comedy greats? What are they like? Well, you've got Simon Pegg, who's doing his usual nerdy, dorky kind of character that he does for most movies, and he is likeable. You do sympathise with him. Yeah, he's good. He's doing his usual shtick. And then there's the late Robin Williams, who provides the voice of Neil's dog, who ends up talking. And yeah, you can definitely hear that comic energy and that tender emotion in his voiceover performance. It's his last performance behind the microphone, and I wouldn't say it's his most dignified character, but it's definitely a good showcase of his talent. It really does show how amazing he was as a comic performer and as an actor. And then there's Monty Python providing the voices of the aliens, and that's pretty awesome. They don't appear that much, but it's fantastic hearing all the Pythons together in the film again. And you're like, oh, that's John Cleese, oh, that's Michael Baylor, oh, it's Terry Jones, oh, Eric Idle, oh, brilliant, oh, so cool. And Terry Gilliam is the only one putting on a voice. Yeah! It's so weird. When you hear the aliens' voices, you'll instantly go like, oh, I know him, yeah, I know him. Even if you're not a big Python fan, you'll recognize these voices immediately. And Terry Gilliam is doing this bizarre, strange, he stands out because he's the only one doing a voice. It's this bizarre, strange voice. He's like, he's the only one trying to do this cartoony alien voice, which is really interesting. I really liked Python's contribution to this film. They were very entertaining and they did provide a lot of funny moments. There's also Eddie Izzard, who's playing a strict principal, and he's okay, he's good. Kind of held back a bit because for most of the film he has to act so upper-lipped and stiff and serious, which isn't Eddie Izzard, to be honest. He's a very weird, eccentric, charismatic comedian, so he's kind of held back in this movie, but he does his best. He does do a decent job. Joanna Lumley doesn't appear that much in the movie, to be honest. She only has like 1 or 2 scenes, but she's great, as usual. She's really good at playing that snarky, posh character that, yeah, she's brilliant. She's just really good at doing her thing, yeah. And much like Simon Pegg, how he's really good at doing his shtick, Joanna Lumley's great at doing this, and yeah, she's fun. She's very fun. So what's my final verdict on absolutely anything? Well, it's fun, it's definitely fun. I did feel entertained all the way through. I laughed all the way through and I was smiling a lot. So yeah, I did like it for the most part, but I did feel as if the story that they were trying to tell wasn't that focused, it wasn't that strong, and most of the serious elements were dealt with at the last minute, which did make the film as a whole feel very cluttered, and it creates a lot of tonal whiplash. So yeah, the story's not that great. The romantic subplot is very boring and lame because it's so cliched. But yeah, like I said, it's still really fun because it comes up with all these strange, wacky ideas, all these bizarre, weird wishes for Simon Pegg to come up with that leads to these really funny and entertaining visuals. And like I said, the film does have a brilliant cast and they all do a really good job for the most part. So I recommend this film, but try not to have your expectations too high. It's entertaining, but as a film, it's kind of naff and tacky. I've been Jambareeqi and I hope you enjoyed my review. If you did, then I encourage you to like, subscribe, and share. I'd also really appreciate it if you could support me on my Patreon. Cheerio, folks!